I'm Tom Sheehan. I'm Executive Vice Provost for Northeastern University, and I want to welcome you to this wonderful closing session we have planned for you for Northeastern's AI in Action Week. This session is co-hosted by the Burns Center for Social Change at Northeastern and is part of the center's Rebooting Democracy in the Age of AI. Talk about fortuitous cross-branding, because that's the name of this session as well, but part of their lecture series. We've had an amazing week with AI in Action this week. And this week's sessions have really highlighted the extraordinary achievements and advancements in AI already, showcasing the remarkable strides in AI and illuminating the vibro ecosystem of innovation that thrives here at Northeastern. I'll take 5 seconds to say, or 10 seconds to say, that when we first conceived of this idea probably 2 months ago, people said, oh, people are busy, they may not have time to do this. And in true Northeastern fashion, we got an incredible number of proposals for talks that people wanted to give. And of course, we were so fortunate to have both an amazing opening night speaker as well as Minister Tang here for the closing session. So it's really been a remarkable collection of efforts to make this all possible. And I hope that you have taken advantage of this. I hope you'll also let me, or indulge me for a second, to just thank the team that put this together. You probably already know this, but these kinds of things take a village. And we have really had an extraordinary effort by a group, and I'm just going to do a quick run through, and I'm probably going to miss somebody, but my co-partner in this has been Megan Model, and then her amazing team and mine, Shauna Frazier, Becky Collett, Molly Liddell, Marlena Bravender, Christine Stigas, Courtney Frazee, Christy Walker, Antoine Lilly, and Michael Calkins, among others, I'm sure. So a shout out to all of them. We have quite a session in store for you today. We're so honored to have with us Audrey Tang, who serves as the inaugural Minister of Digital Affairs for Taiwan. And Minister Tang has really had an amazing background. And it started as a child. She practiced Taoism to moderate strong emotions to survive a cardiac condition. She attended 10 educational institutions in 10 years and then decided to leave formal schooling to pursue self-education at the age of 14. In her 20s, Minister Tang rose to prominence as a leader in free and open source software, revitalizing the Haskell and Perl programming languages while transitioning to become non-binary. During her 30s, she played a critical role in shaping GovZero, one of the most prominent civic tech movements worldwide. And in 2014, she provided support to broadcast the demands and resolve conflicts during a 3-week occupation of Taiwan's parliament. Following this, she became a young advisor to a Taiwanese minister, and after ensuing election, a minister herself. She helped to develop participatory democracy platforms such as vTaiwan and Join, bringing civic innovation into the public sector through initiatives like the Presidential Hackathon and Ideathon. Other accomplishments include shaping Taiwan's internationally acclaimed COVID-19 response, as well as safeguarding its 2020 presidential and legislative elections from foreign interference. Please give a round of applause, and who will join us shortly for Minister Tang. The conversation today will be led by our own Professor Beth Novak. Beth is obviously a professor here at Northeastern University, where she directs the Burns Center for Social Change and its partner projects, GovLab and Innovate US. She's also a core faculty member at the Institute for Experiential AI. As if that's not enough, she's also the chief AI strategist for the state of New Jersey and co-chair of the state's AI task force. Previously, she served in the White House as Deputy Chief Technology Officer and head of the White House Open Government Initiative, and as a member of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's Digital Council. Her work focuses on using AI to reimagine participatory democracy and strengthen governance, and she has spent her career helping institutions incorporate more participatory and open ways of working. You can see that we put a powerhouse combination here together, and we're really looking forward to this conversation. So please join me in welcoming the esteemed Audrey Tang and our own Beth Novak for this conversation.
Put you next to your coffee, the important place to be. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for that kind introduction, and it's wonderful to have you here. What Tom didn't say to us at the outset, and I have the great pleasure to do, is that we are also here to celebrate the publication of your new book. Congratulations, which is known, the minister's new book is Plurality, The Future of Collaborative Technology and Democracy, which she co-authored with Glenn Weil, who is here in the audience. If we can have you wave, there we go. And we're just delighted. And I want to recommend the book to everybody and hope that you will check it out online and read it. We're here, of course, during a very tumultuous week, and our hearts are heavy for the losses that were suffered in Taiwan with the earthquake that took place there. We are very glad that you are safe and with us, but we know that you face a daunting challenge ahead of you when you return. So while we have this brief break to talk about the book and to talk about you, let's dive in. And I think it might help people here, just as we begin the conversation, if you would just give a very brief introduction to what a digital minister actually does, especially the very first one in a country.
Okay. So thank you for that question. I've been digital minister in charge of social innovation, youth engagement, and open government since 2016, which is a very new position. There was no such position in Taiwan. So in 2016, I was asked to write my own job description, which I will recite here. It's very short. It goes like this. When we see Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of Beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. When we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. And whenever we hear that a singularity is near, let us always remember the plurality is here. So that's the entirety of my job description. So, and by plurality, we mean technologies for collaborative diversity. Taiwan is an incredibly diverse place with 20 and more counting national languages, with one of the highest religious diversity in the world, which means that we have a lot of social conversations that could have been polarizing. Back in 2014, during the Sunflower Movement, the administration enjoyed an approval rate of 9%. And the polarization was impossible. There's a sense of political helplessness and so on. So my mission as digital minister is just to use technologies to ensure that we not only heal the polarization, but also create new cross-cutting conflicts where there's half of blue and half of green parties on this side and the other half on the other side, so that over time we can become a place where conflicts is always turned into co-creation and not overarching feuds between ideological camps. It also helps that in Mandarin, 数位 means both plural and digital. So in that, I'm the digital minister, but I'm also the minister for plurality. So at this moment, as the Minister of Digital Affairs, I'm responsible for universal access, open data, data altruism and coalitions and fabrics, coalitions, whatever you want to call it, spectrum allocation, and so on. But as Cabinet CIO, I'm also in charge of service delivery, AI, digital transformation, and so on. But also as chair of National Cybersecurity Institute, I'm in charge of defending against cyber attacks and information manipulation.
So I want to pick up on that last point. Of course, this is part of the Reboot Democracy lecture series. You were kind enough, actually, you may not remember, to have kicked off this series maybe 4 years ago. We had this conversation. But a lot has happened in the world since, and since this is AI Week more broadly, I do want to just pick up on this point about cybersecurity. You just had an election I don't know if you want to tell people also what happened to you last week, but there is a very bellicose China in your rearview mirror. The whole world is very nervous now about the future of the semiconductor industry, which depends wholly on Taiwan. So I'm just wondering, before we get into talking, I hope more about the hopeful future and the innovations that you work on. I'm just curious, tell us a little bit more about how your job relates to this work of trying to secure the global semiconductor industry and what this really means as we think about the future of AI.
Yeah, the earthquake, although comparable in scale compared to the one that we had in '99, which was really bad, killed 1,000, and a week or more, there was electricity connectivity problems and so on back then. Because of our investment in resilience, this time, well, it did still kill 10, but the electricity, the low Earth orbit satellites, the mid-Earth orbit satellites, everything restored service function very quickly. And I read that TSMC and the supply chain is already more than 70% recovered and should be recovered pretty soon. So we're very resilient against natural earthquakes. But to the unnatural one you just alluded to, well, that is a issue on everyone's mind. Indeed, during the election, we already know that the cheapest way to disrupt Taiwan's stability is just to polarize our society. So we have seen a lot of information manipulation attempts that just look at existing polarizations in the society and try to amplify that. Not so different from during the pandemic, where there were similar attempts to create vax, anti-vax, mask, anti-mask, or whatever divisions in our society. We have been able to counter that through pre-bunking, like me deepfaking myself and sending to the society, teaching people that deepfakes is coming. That was 2 years ago. Or involving people in online citizen assemblies where we think about these things together and come up with good enough ideas that we can all live with. And all this was part of societal resilience. And I think as we keep doing this with more people at more scale and deeper on things like TikTok or information manipulation, online things like that, it will create mutual trust like we have seen after the January election. Our effective polarization, meaning how people hate each other across party lines, is at very low at this point. It actually, I think, the lowest point in the past decade or so, because everybody feel that they participated in the democracy, in the counting, in the live streaming of the counting, in the pre-bunking of the election rigging accusations or whatever. So at the end of the day, everyone feel they have won a little bit. So I'm cautiously optimistic that with a resilient society, whatever foreign adversary that wants to try cyber or information manipulation attacks will think twice, because it actually backfired this time.
So this is a great segue into my next question, which is really about how do you do all of this? How do you do this work that's both about maintaining a defensive posture when it comes to cybersecurity and creating resilience, and on the other hand, trying to innovate in how the government works, and then innovate in democracy, which we'll get into a little bit more. So maybe you could just say a little bit more, especially on this kind of front with regard to innovations in government. You did a lot during COVID. What have you been working on recently? And how do you do it all? Or is it just through deepfake cloning? And wait.
Okay.
Nope, you're really here.
Okay, yes. High definition Planck scale. So anyway, yeah, I think during the pandemic, every jurisdiction faces this trade-off between like privacy and freedom of movement on one side and public health on the other. In Taiwan, the way we solve this trade-off is never by the government's mandate in like dialing a dial, but rather by asking the civil society, are there better solutions that pushes the Pareto frontier that doesn't have to make such trade-offs? And indeed, in the civic tech communities, there are many people with very deep expertise in privacy-enhancing technology, in zero-knowledge technologies, things that are very esoteric to the public service, but they have been using that for quite a while because they're crypto nerds or something, right? And so because of that, our contact tracing system, for example, was invented by the civil society, by the very privacy advocates themselves that leaves no trace through oblivious storage and decentralized context tracing. I'll spare you the details. But the idea is that anyone can just use their phone and scan a random code posted as QR code on a venue, which the venue printed itself is a random code that they have chosen it themselves, and it just automatically texts to 1922. And when it texts that, it stays in the telecom, which already know your phone number anyway, but you show that to the venue, which learns nothing about you, and after 4 weeks, that's deleted. And so you can also go to a website to see which contact tracing agent have seen your data in the past 4 weeks and so on. So it's also reverse accountability. And so all these is bread and butter, right, in this online PETS space. But had we had to use procurement or RFPs or whatever to do that, we cannot do that in 3 months, while during the pandemic we have to do that in 3 days. And so because it's decentralized, because people can print their own QR codes, we have more than 2 million adoption within like the first 24 hours of introducing this contact tracing system, which held until Delta and even the first wave of Omicron, until the vaccine become generally available. So that's just one anecdote, but it shows that how people first, public-private partnership can scale beyond the existing thought trade-offs.
Now, COVID, of course, and having a crisis, never waste a good crisis, they say. But beyond that, you've been able to do so much more. Is there something special about what's happening in Taiwanese government or in Taiwanese society? Or is this about your having gone inside that's created this receptivity to accepting innovation from the outside, to saying, we'll let civil society build it and we'll adopt that innovation as opposed to we have to control it from top down? Is it all about you?
No, I think I'm just one tentacle, right, of this global public code, digital public infrastructure, free and open and liber software movement that happens to have a good testing lab in Taiwan. But the actual technologies we use, the PETS, they're not invented in Taiwan. The POLIS system that we use to build bridges across people's ideas about Uber or other topics, that's from Seattle. The participatory systems of e-petition that come from Reykjavik, the participatory budget came from Madrid and Barcelona. I have to mention both. And so anyway, so the point being that there is a global community, and Taiwan is not exceptional in inventing these things. But I think we've been particularly open in trying out new things together along with the global civic tech and open government community.
We don't want Spanish people trying to assassinate you as well as Chinese people trying to assassinate you, so well played there. Let's shift to talking about the book and what we're really here to talk about, which is democracy and the intersection with AI. So in this really magisterial book, you write that technology and democracy are currently in conflict in most liberal democracies, with technology seen as either breaking down social fabric or increasing centralized control. Do you want to explain that a little bit more for us?
It's called techlash, right? Like people are new to this idea. Not many. Okay. Well, some people are. So I see a few heads shaking. So the idea is really very simple. Technologies, when they are in the hands of a few and opaque to many, creates a social dynamic in which that the agency, that is to say the ability to do some direct action, is diminished, because while you can find people of similar ideas, interests, and whatever online, somehow it always leads to people hating each other, very interestingly, or people distancing away from each other, or people finding that tribalism or whatever engagement their algorithm uses amplify those voices that introduce toxicity and things like that. And so, of course, we know that these large platforms have trust and safety teams, that they invest in such technologies to moderate in theory. But what we have not seen is a meaningful, like, grassroots organization of people for things that they care about. Often they occur in spite of those large social media or a large platform of broadcasting or things like that. They find their own niche, like Mastodon or whatever groups to unify with. And so, very interestingly, not many people in democratic movements, in professional facilitation or things like that, think, oh, it's best if we just everybody gets online and magically we will have consensus. There's been in the past few years, especially after the pandemic, a return to face-to-face settings, to trusted and safe spaces in communities where the use of technology is minimal. It is just to capture the recording and make a transcript and maybe summarization and nothing more. And so that is the distance that we're seeing from the democracy communities, especially deliberative communities, and communication at scale, very large platforms. And so part of the book is trying to not explain this gap, which everybody can feel, but rather propose ways where people can move into the middle by a new generation of pro-social social media and not anti-social social media.
Oh, so I have to ask you very quickly. You and I were both at a major tech company this week and at a conference, and I was struck by a comment that was made by somebody. You were in the room when someone else said, "You people are all so nice. Why are your platforms all so awful?" Exactly. And can this work in a world, can the world that you are talking about of a more pro-social digital democracy work in a world of privatized platforms and in a world of AI that is in the hands of private companies?
The short answer is no. Right? So because that event was Chatham House rule, I will not say who said this, but I think
we'll have another person after us then.
Right, exactly. Yes, a non-Bess, non-Audrey person said that. And then I think the general feeling there is that even if those bridging system that creates consensus or at least consent over polarization or whatever works perfectly, as long as they are in the hands of a few, it creates a dynamic where it becomes a better authoritarian governance system rather than a good democratic system, right? People would just defer their agency to such omnipotent, everything-seeing, whatever. So transparency would be reversed, being people become transparent to that apparatus, and that apparatus still isn't transparent to the people. So it's not just about building AI system that can co-create consensus out of conflict. It is also to ensure that, like any 4 people in a room or these many people in the room can, in their own laptops, in their own hardware, run such systems in such a way that at least allows tuning. We won't talk about pre-training, but at least tuning toward our own reward model, things that felt interesting or at least culturally appropriate to the norm of this room. And if we can do so on edge devices, then we have a real chance of rebuilding the public square, starting from a small park-like structure instead of being a franchise of, Mac Public Square or something like that.
So what does this look like now as a practical matter in Taiwan? So what are you doing to do democracy differently now with AI in Taiwan? Yes. And what will you be doing in the next years? Yeah,
so in the past year, so in last year's Summit for Democracy around a year ago, we started with the Collective Intelligence Project at CIP.org, this idea called alignment assemblies. The idea is that any community can use open source tools such as Polis or OR ideas. The first one was OR ideas to ensure that people can say what they want about how AI should behave. Like AI shouldn't discriminate based on ableness or whatever, right? And in OR ideas, the idea is that everyone participating will see 2 choices, and they have to rank which principle is better. And as long as sufficient amount of people do this, the bridging statements start to emerge, consensus start to emerge. Everybody's pushed toward the Pareto frontier, where real trade-offs are made instead of those lose-lose solutions that we see in many policy making. And so when a room of, say, 1,000 people do that, we have a result matrix of cohering, blending, volition. And then we take that And then in the training of AI models, there's this idea of alignment tuning, meaning that we take a pre-trained model and we say, okay, here's this group of people, and they have these preferences. Output your result in such a way that it will gain approval from this very diverse group who nevertheless value on some very abstract principles. So Anthropic, which is a company that makes a model called Claude, in Claude 3 Opus, included such a constitution document co-created via Polis with 1,000 statistically representative American people, and they found that it performs equally well with the constitution created by researchers, but far less discriminating. That is to say, it's more fitting to the social norms. And in Taiwan, we have people in Taipei, people in Tainan, in different cities which has different norms to co-create. And again, everybody can start such things by themselves because the tools are open. And so in our Taiwan, our sovereign model, the Taide, the trustworthy AI dialogue engine, is open source and will be fully open source, I think, in a week or so. And what's our expectation is that a small group, a university, a business, or whatever, would just run their internal alignment assemblies and stack upon the constitutionally aligned AI models so that those models fit the local norm in that organization.
So as part of talking about democracy, and I want to come back to more of these conversations about civil society and alignment with AI and what's happening, but you just had an election, which for most people, when we say democracy, they hear election. You are the first of countries now around the world who are going to go to the polls this year. It's probably the year in which more countries are going to have elections than any other year in history. And there is obviously a lot of concern about the role of AI in elections. Has there been interesting experiences from your perspective? Are you worried about the deepfake problem, and are you worried about AI's impact on elections, or are you hopeful? And what does it mean now to think about doing elections differently in the AI age?
Yeah, we already knew that there will be deep-faked or cheap-faked short videos about election rigging, about counting. We already know that because it's so obvious. Like, everybody would just try it. Why not, right? It's now so easy to generate those short clips. And so we pre-bunked, not just by me deep-faking myself to the citizens, but also do a really paper-only counting process that's still very efficient, finished in 4 hours. But we made sure that as we take each legislator or presidential ballot, there's like 3 or more YouTubers with recording devices belonging to different parties. We have 3 major parties, and each count has to show to those 3 different angles so that there is video documentary of each and every vote. And so when right after the election, predictably, on short video platforms, those election rigging short videos appear, and that tries to polarize people. The party leadership of all 3 major parties checked with their local YouTuber that recorded that particular county station, and they all came out and say that was fake. And when all the 3 leaders say that, that disinformation, that manipulation cannot spread anymore, right? It's fully inoculated. And this is just one example, but I think in general, the idea of using ICT technology only on the defensive side, like live streaming the counting, and not on the potentially risky offensive side, like electronic voting machines, would be my main suggestion to the countries going to the polls this year.
So now let's go to the day after the election day, and the other 364 days, which is frankly so important in terms of solving problems for real people in their lives. Have you seen anything you're particularly excited about, or work that you're doing or that you've observed elsewhere that's really about either delivering services that help people or solving problems, making policy, doing the kind of hard work of governing that happens after the election?
Yeah, so we just had another alignment assembly, one that's not about tuning our sovereign model. It's the alignment assembly around information integrity. Basically, we sent again, I think 170,000 random SMS messages to random numbers of Taiwan from this single number called 111, which is the SMS number that all government communications come from. We're switching to this regime where unless unless it's a short code or someone you met face to face, every other mobile number is probably a bot, right? So we're shifting to a new epistemic norm, right? So like it's either blue tick or people you have exchanged face to face. And so from that one-on-one, people know it's from the government, and they feel it's pre-survey about what they feel are the most important issues about AI harms caused online on large platforms. And then a statistically representative sample of 500 people got an invitation, a microcosm, of which 450 attended this entire day, which is very high engagement rate. People really want to talk about this. And with the help of the Stanford online deliberation platform, there's this AI facilitator, right, that not just people who don't speak as much. It allows interruption, but just for 5 seconds. It does real-time transcription, it does summarization, it surfaces the common unknowns that the group feels they have to ask the experts. They use board counting to vote on those, so on and so forth. And so after 6 hours or more of these things, we now have a very comprehensive picture on how to counter the AI harms. For example, there was a highlighted harm about celebrities being a voice cloned, and in online advertisements, they would just click through the advertisement into a encrypted chat with that celebrity, but that not just the vocal model, but the prosody, everything was cloned now. And that is a huge issue on transnational fraud detection, because it's end-to-end encrypted. It's very difficult to discover such things. And then the suggested solution, very simple, is just to require digital signatures that has a very strong KYC, like over-the-counter KYC in the government registration counter. You have to sign that before you can post any advertisement on Taiwan. And so that basically solves the problem of content detection, because you don't have to rely on that or watermarking anymore. You can just go back to the root. If it's not signed, then it's fake. So this is just one microcosm of one statement, but we're taking these and making new laws based on the rough consensus of the people, like in real time. We can afford to do this like every other week.
Are these kinds of summarization functionalities the thing you're most excited about when it comes to the evolution of these participatory mechanisms? You've been running online engagement with citizens for years and years. For those who don't know, the V-Taiwan process that you pioneered helped with the crafting of 26 pieces of national legislation in which hundreds of thousands of citizens have been involved. How has that evolved? What's worked? What hasn't worked? What do you want to do differently in terms of these participation mechanisms?
Yeah, the V-Taiwan experiment was very helpful in the sense that it convinced the career public service that it is actually lower risk if you ask people, like random crowd of people, questions well before you have a draft. Back 10 years ago, that's deeply counterintuitive. People in the career public service would think if we share our drafts, people are going to protest, people are going to flip the table and things like that. You know, you're the original open government person. I don't have to explain this to you. But Polis and similar tools that V-Taiwan uses convince everyone that those energies, as long as they're co-creative, then it's not like polls where people protest because the post questions was written by the higher ups. This is a wiki survey where the poll questions are written by our fellow citizens, and that made a world of difference. It's like people learning together, right? So that's the thing that worked. The thing that didn't work was that V-Taiwan required a lot of face-to-face, very close coordination between the facilitators, civil society leaders, and so on. And because during the 3 years of pandemic, although we didn't have lockdown, that just didn't work very well over masks. And so the face-to-face convening kind of went down. Many of the V-Taiwan contributors pivoted to do pandemic control and things like that, which is, of course, very saves lives. But after that, V-Taiwan pivoted a bit into a project that explores the most advanced AI uses, like far beyond polymerization, AI nudging, AI bridging of cultural differences across linguistic differences, political bridging, and things like that. So it becomes somewhat of a research project that is now partially funded by OpenAI. And then in the government, we have the Join platform, which continues to run very well during the pandemic. Very good participation rate is where people go to for e-petition, participatory budgeting, and all that.
And in the book, though, you take us into a further off future, into a world of immersive shared reality technologies. What is that little further off future? So maybe not this year, but the year after.
So we experimented with that, I think, since 2016, when I first know that I will become a minister. But before I'm actually made a minister in October, I was in Paris, and we had a conversation about children's rights online or whatever, a general purpose far-range conversation with junior and senior high school students. And so that took place in highfidelity.io, which was a social VR platform. And I modeled myself, and I donned this HTC Vive, and I shrunk myself to the size of the junior high school students. And so to them, they're not looking up to me anymore. We're just sharing this playground, and we're just experiencing things together. So I'm deeply convinced that if we can literally step into each other's shoes, it makes the rapport part, the emotional support part of deliberation much easier to connect, which is something that polis or our ideas can never replace.
We built something called Democracy Island in Second Life years ago, except I didn't shrink myself. I made myself 6 feet tall because with our avatars, we always want to live our fantasy. Are you worried about the virtual escapism or the isolation, though, that technology also engenders, the phenomenon that so many people have written about of what happens when we grow up behind our screens?
We don't see that in Second Life, do we? I was there too, helping to build a Second Life search engine. But anyway, instead of walking down the memory lane, I think the Second Life experience showed me that as long as the fundamental protocol is interoperable, there are also people who run like Open Grid or things like that provides the Second Life experience without having to buy those Linden dollars or whatever, right? So the point being, the initial prototypes may not be open source or public code. When we first used Polis in 2015, it was proprietary, right? It was only later when we say that like rigor and civil society organization reproducibility is important and so on, we finally convinced Colin and friends into a non-for-profit computational democracy project. Yeah. So it's okay to be proprietary on your first or second tries, but over time, if it's moving toward a place where it's interoperable, like how Threads.net now joins the Fediverse, so you can build your own user experience, your own front ends, then I think this capture of isolationism, the threat is much lower, because that stems from the misaligned incentive of the shareholders of large platforms want you to keep you engaged in a fast-thinking and instead of a slow-thinking mode. But if people build their own worlds in Minecraft or whatever, then these incentives aren't there, and therefore less of those isolationist problems.
So we're about to transition to your questions. So if we have a mic that's about to go around, I'm going to ask you one more thing to give people a chance to percolate what they want to ask. But we're going to be taking questions in just a second. But I want to pivot briefly to the fact that we have a lot of students in the room and potentially, I think, probably many more online. So what advice do you have for the students here and the lifelong students here? Before we wrap up, is what advice do you want to give folks here as they think about their future careers in the age of AI? How do they get to grow up to be you?
Don't be me. Okay. I strive myself to be a good enough ancestor, meaning instead of foreclosing futures for next generations, instead of designing too good systems that prevents new systems from happening, we make sure that there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. We make sure that we open up to our gaps, our cracks. During the pandemic at the time, we were enjoying like 92% of approval rates. And I publicly thanked the 8%, the people who kept us honest, the people who push the Pareto front, who say you can be even more privacy preserving, who said that you can be zero knowledge and things like that. And so be those people to instead of being complacent, think about ways where existing trade-offs only make sense in a kind of legacy mindset. And if you think outside of that, then you can become a reverse mentor. In Taiwan, each and every cabinet member can appoint 1 or 2 people younger 35 as reverse mentors. I was once, but I'm very old now. I'm 42 or 43. So so I have my own reverse mentors now, who are young advisors that keeps reminding me the trade-offs in my mind was a relic of the past, and new trade-offs can be done now that goes far beyond the Pareto front. And so be that person and be that 8%.
I love it. Questions? And I want to make clear that there's a preference here for the students first, lifelong students second. Where's our mic or our hands? Okay. I have a question up front here.
Sure. Thank you. Hi, my name is Jazz. I'm one of the co-ops for the Burn Center AI for Impact program under Beth. Thank you so much for the talk, Minister Tang. This was really valuable. One question I wanted to follow up on regarding the polarization and elections questions that were asked earlier. As you identified, we are in a world of polarization, especially politically, and I believe even culturally and ideologically. How do you fight against these, you could call subversive tactics, such as those employed by Russia's post-KGB on the US and even sometimes internally in our own borders, as an individual, when all these things are quilted and made ever more complex and veiled in the world of technology, especially with AI?
That's a great question. So, personally, my hobby for many years is called troll hugging. I hug trolls. Troll hugging. Some people hug trees. I hug trolls. Okay. Troll hugging is defined as so people sometimes make personal attacks to me online. Maybe they write 300 words, like very vicious, very toxic. And I challenge myself to find in that corpus like 3 words or 5 words that can be constructed as constructive. And so then I construe them as constructive, and then reply them in good faith, as if all these other words doesn't exist. And then I reply them with humor. And so I think this idea, which was generalized into something called humor over rumor, is to understand that humor in these contexts travel faster than outrage. And probably the only emotion that travels faster than outrage. And all these polarization attacks, they dissipate if you laugh about it, if the tension is left out, right, of the conversation. And so I have this Flickr account where you can find me in Creative Commons Zero free of copyright doing all the memes that you can see on the internet. And so whenever something like that happens, I can just post a meme of myself. And my staff can just, Photoshop or caption whatever funny things and post it about it, and so on and so forth. And so this kind of diffusing the steam of polarization, when coupled with pre-bunking of anticipating these attacks and educating people on how to participate in collaborative fact-checking, is like 2 halves, right, of a sandwich, right? If you can anticipate, you pre-bunk, you do inoculation and so on. For the few things you cannot, you just create humor, so the next time people think about it, they think about something positive. And so over time, new polarizations are made because the old polarization axis no longer work. And so for each and every new societal challenge, we try to frame it in such a way that is orthogonal to the previous polarization division points.
Okay, more questions. And we can alternate between the student and the lifelong students in the room. So Let's see where, oh, we've got a hand in the back there. Oh, good. Another, oh, one here, and then we'll take one there. Do you want two at once or one at a time?
Depending on how long this
Oh,
is.
sure.
Let's see.
Hello.
And I'll ask you to
Hello.
keep the question brief.
Yeah, sure. I just have two short questions. Thank you for the discussion. My name is Sundar. I'm a PhD student in neurosciences here. My first question is, you talked about like the advantages,
Maybe
the
just
pros
hold
and
it
cons.
really close.
Sorry.
Like in a line like this.
Okay. The pros and cons of AI, and also you talked about like how to involve people in using AI for, you know, like different governmental schemes and agendas. My question is like, how do you, like, despite the multitude of cons that AI has, but there are also like some exceptional pros that we can benefit from. As a minister, like, how do you convince people to, you know, have the trust in AI that, you know, it could be used for the collective good of people? Because my dad currently he's in Taipei right now working, so he's very skeptical about using AI or any sort of like digital tools for any of his work. So as a government and as a minister, like, how do you do that? And my second question is, from few talks that I attended, part of this AI Action Week is that using AI in like healthcare, like especially in digital health, the cost can be like reduced tremendously in terms of like what we're doing in pipeline process. What's Taiwan's state right now in incorporating AI in digital health? Thank you.
Wow, I can take 3 hours. It's like symposium question. Okay, to the first, I think the government ministers should trust the people, not the other way around. So I radically trust my fellow citizens. Some of them may trust back, but that's not required. And by trusting the people, I mean, for example, by sharing our sovereign model Taide as Apache license, so everybody can run it on their own laptop. That's trusting people, because whatever they run or locally fine-tune or whatever, many of them will do good, right? Reply to email faster or things like that. Some of them will do bad. They will flip the reward model and create conflicts online. But by trusting our people, it means that they have the freedom to do that on the edge. The non-trusting version of that would be just keeping, you know, API access and monitoring each and every input string, right, that our citizens enter to our AI system, but we do not do that. So radically trusting the citizens, to my knowledge, is the only sure way to earn back some of those trust in the future. To give no trust is to get no trust. This is the first answer. The second answer, Taiwan, very interestingly, has a universal healthcare system that you cannot opt out from. And it's extended to residents also, not just citizens. And just short plug, if you contribute source or any internet commons for 8 years or more, you're automatically eligible for Taiwanese residency, including that healthcare. Just apply for a digital gold card online. Anyway, so yes, Glenn is a gold card holder. And if Glenn stays in Taiwan for less than half a year every year, he doesn't have to pay taxes. So it's all good size, no bad size. Anyway, so the point being that those citizens and residents who enroll in the healthcare, just a couple years ago, our constitutional court ruled that they must have opt-out options to AI training using that universal healthcare data, which is a very different place from Europe, right? Europe starts from the place where you have to opt in. And then there's now new data reusability laws or things like that that says if sufficient amount of PETS is applied, then some of them may be exempt. We started from the other side. Like by default, it's used to train AI models. But now people are now opting out of it if they want. And so, but the constitutional court ruling also said that if in places where, like pandemic control or whatever, that we don't offer those opt-out, it needs to be very, very strict. It needs to be essentially zero knowledge. So not like with reasonable technical implementation, you cannot reverse it. No, mathematically, you must prove that you cannot re-identify personal data from that data set, which calls for a new generation of like multi-party computation, homomorphic encryption. Things were once considered too expensive to compute. Now we have to invest in the chips or whatever to do that. And so to your question, I think previously, in the name of the public good and universal healthcare, we were very, how to say that politically, very conveniently using these of society data sets for research and things like that. But now we're moving to a more GDPR compliant way to do that with a twist of new next generation PETS.
Jay, in the back, you had a hand up.
Hello, my name is Jay. I am the Artificial Intelligence and Social Impact Fellow for the Burns Center and a Master's of Science of Media Advocacy student here at Northeastern. I also wanted to say I recently came out as non-binary, so I wanted to express my admiration for you as the first transgender cabinet minister in the world. I think that's something that needs to be said, so thank you. My question along those lines is... Along those lines, my question is about identity. In the conversation around your upcoming book, you said that digital identity is pivotal to securing rights within a digital world. So my question to you is, what do you mean by digital identity, and how we can create online spaces that use digital identity as a unifying force rather than as a polarizing force like identity can be in countries like the United States?
Yeah, I mean it in a very specific sense, in that one needs to prove that across however many layers of intermediary or AI system or whatever, the person we're talking with is a person. And this is harder than it looks like nowadays, right? Now that with the acoustic models, the face models, the prosody, everything, you know, if you have seen the Sora demo, imagining that working in real time. And so then probably all the epistemic backstops of what constitutes as a proof of personhood is gone. And so, but still we need to work with each other across geographic instances. We still have to coordinate. We cannot degenerate into a world where, you know, Beth has to touch me here to ensure that I'm a person, and then that trust just cannot extend the minute I walk out of the store. Or we cannot live in that world, right? And so it's concretely implemented in two things. One is some way for people physically in the same room who have run like KYC processes. It's an old idea called Web of Trust. Back when PGP was new, right? The idea is that we run those parties where people verify each other's pretty good privacy keys and verify each other's personhood. And then like in the party of 17 or whatever, a threshold of like 15 or whatever can vouch for a new real person into the web of trust. So that's like very niche, right? It's something geeks do. But nowadays, it may become a necessity if we're going to work with, you know, the reality that shapeshifters are everywhere online. The other thing, of course, is how to do selective disclosure. Say that in this KYC party that takes place in a government registration office or in Apple Store where you wear a Vision Pro to scan your retina or something like that, right? Which may actually happen. And so all these things. After this, then instead of just revealing your labels, your not just names, but also like gender identities or things like that wholesale. Like if you present your driver's license, you're revealing a lot more metadata about you than just the fact that you're a person, right? So we need to design those selective disclosure, zero knowledge systems, verifiable credentials, and things like that for that one transaction to prove that I'm over 18, but nothing more. I'm 18 and I'm a human and nothing more. And if the society shifts to that norm, then we get to keep or even enhance privacy in a post-Gen AI world. But if we do not do that well as an infrastructure, we would degenerate into a real ID for online behavior system.
Thank you. Please, can we get a mic in the front here?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Diane Grant. I'm also a co-op here with the Burns Center. And I have a bit of a broad question, but I know as lifelong learners, I feel like we all kind of have like a sticky note or a notebook or something, like a tab on our computer with all of the ideas and things we don't really get to or have time for. Like what's on that sticky note for you? What's kind of pushing the boundaries that you're excited to look into, that you want us to carry the torch as young people?
Well, that's a great question. So in the Plurality book, Plurality as Collaborative Diversity, there's actually two themes that are connected together. The first theme, which we talk about today, is how to, instead of polarization as a destructive force, use it as a co-creational force. And that's basically what those questions and conversation is about. But there's also another part of that, which is in the world in which those systems work so well, are the conflicts and diversity a non-renewable energy? Do we just become a community of people who are so, rough consensus and running code so that we end up with things that we can all live with, and there's no that 8% anymore. It's just people generally, continuously practicing democracy and resolving issues and so on, but that also runs into the issues of a local optimum, like people would just stop there and foreclose future possibilities. So another half of that research question is how to regenerate diversity, how to regenerate even dissent, how to regenerate this will to destruct political systems and deconstruct and reconstruct and so on. This is less urgent now, mostly because we're still in the exploding polarization phase. But this is very important, because if we cannot keep creating cross-cutting conflicts, then we do not have the ability as a polity to improve democracy system. Democracy would just be good enough, and then we will stop there, right? So for future generations, my hope as a good enough ancestor is never to be too good, so that there is still some room for dissent, so that we can free the future together across generations, instead of thinking about solutionism for this generation. So regenerating diversity and conflict, that is my invitation to you.
On that note, I know that there's probably many more questions in the room, so I will have to recommend to you that you read the book to get the answers. If we want to bring that back up, just as a reminder, the book is called Plurality, The Future of Collaborative Technology and Democracy. Link there, yes, plurality.net. /English. So congratulations very much on the publication, and to you, Glenn, as well. Really a magnum opus, and we're so grateful that.
I just want to invite people not just to read, but to co-create.
Yeah, send us pull requests.
So, this is not.
Wait, Mike. We'll bring the mic to you. Hang on.
Think of this like a Google Doc. Don't think of this like a paperback book, even though it will be a paperback book as well. It belongs to all of you, I hope, and everyone who comes to one of these events, everyone who thinks about it, is invited to make this with us, tell the future of technology together.
Yes, and it's Curriculum Commons 0, meaning that if you subset the book and add your name on it and take our names out and say it's your book, we cannot sue you. So make it yours. Thank you.
It is. If you're, however, in my class, this does not count as your final project, though. With that, let me thank our hosts here at Northeastern and AI Action Week. Thank you to Tom and to Megan and your teams for having us as part of this phenomenal series. I want to also thank from the Burns Center, Bonnie and Aubrey and Jay and Susan. Thank you very, very much. And to all of our students for being here. Thank you to the sign language interpreter, which is happening. It's happening over there. You can't see it, but it's to our left. So thank you to the interpreter for their service in this. The minister is one of several talks in our Reboot Democracy in the Age of AI lecture series. We have a talk coming up, both online and in person, on April 11th at 5 p.m., together with the Department of Architecture, with the folks from Urbanist AI, if you know them, another open source collective doing really cool co-creation with citizens of urban planning. And then on May 16th, we will have Orly Lobel, author of the book The Equality Machine, here to talk about AI and its impact on workers, the workplace, and how AI can be used to forge and create greater equality. So you can sign up for those at rebootdemocracy.ai. With that, we're so grateful to you for joining us. Thank you so much for making us a stop on your trip. And thank you.
Thank you.